Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us at the Government Aftershock High-Level Forum. My name is Jamie Berryhill. I am with the OECD Observatory of Public Sector Innovation, and we are thrilled to convene this global dialogue on the crisis and modern-day challenges and what issues these reveal about the role and expectations of government, both now and into the future. Yesterday, we had a jam-packed day with over 60 local conversations around the world that brought together over 4,500 participants and touched on many different issues. Today, we have 21 sessions as part of our global forum, and each contributes to a development of a global call to action for governments, and that we will develop here at the OECD. At this particular session, we are discussing our annual work in servicing key global trends and case studies in public sector innovation. First, you're going to hear from remarks from Marco Daglio, who's the head of the Observatory of Public Sector Innovation, as well as our partner Abeer Tahlak, at the director of the UAE's Mohammed bin Rashid Center for Government Innovation, which is our partner on this project. Then we'll have a series of talks by the innovators behind the case studies uncovered in this year's work, who will be introduced shortly. And finally, we'll take questions from the audience and engage in some discussion. Before I pass things on to Marco, we encourage you to get involved in this session using the modules on the right-hand side of your screen. The discussion module is a place to share any comments or insights you have in relation to the panel. You can ask your questions in the questions module, and you can also upvote other people's questions to express interest using the thumbs up button. And finally, if you'd like to tweet along, please use the hashtag #GovAftershock. With that, I will pass it over to Marco, who's going to give you some opening remarks about our work. Marco.
Thanks, Jamie, and thanks everyone for joining the session. We are here to celebrate a long-standing partnership on fostering public sector innovation at the global level between the OECD Observatory of Public Sector Innovation and our colleagues at the UAE Mohammed bin Rashid Center for Government Innovation. So since 2016, we have worked together to surface key trends and case studies in public sector innovation with the hope to inspire others to take actions and replicate these successes. However, 2020 has not been a normal year. COVID-19 has changed government's agenda and focused attention where it was and still largely is mostly needed: fight against a global pandemic. That means we have had to adjust and innovate on how we approach the innovation trend exercise this year. We have been fortunate to have a solid knowledge basis to work on, to which many of you contributed. And I want to thank all of those that give us the possibility to do this incredible work. So we gathered together 683 cases received by 91 countries throughout our 2020 call for innovation and research, as well as 450 cases we have received through our COVID-19 Innovative Response Tracker. So based on this, we have developed this discrete discussion around 5 key trends that we have seen in government innovation over the last year. After a lot of analysis and many Zoom interviews with government leaders and practitioners like yourself, we developed 5 reports. The first report looked at the innovative responses to the COVID-19 crisis. It shows that government rapidly stepped up to take action under exceptional circumstances. And we're really happy to have here with us Mikk Vainik, head of the Accelerate Estonia, to talk about Hack the Crisis, which was featured as a case study in the report. We also looked at the concept of seamless government and how what it entails and how it's applied in practice to eliminate points of friction between the machinery of government and those that they serve. So we are happy to have our partner Abeer Tahlak from the UAE Mohammed bin Rashid Center for Government Innovation to speak about the UAE Ministry of Possibility, which was featured also as a case studies. The Ministry of Possibilities illustrates how we can build experimental departments to bring about agility and proactiveness at the core of our public services. We also looked and focused on the overlooked in this year's edition, showing innovation that are there to address the needs of segments of society that are at risk of failing through the cracks. And I welcome Sue Stevenson today to discuss about the Barefoot College, which was also featured as a case studies. The college offers training to rural communities in developing countries on how to bring solar electricity to their villages. So we're very interested to hear more about this. We also looked at discussing the tensions that government face while seeking to use powerful new technologies that provide new insight while mitigating harm to freedom and rights. And you may have just heard from Mr. Chan Chu Ho, who leads the agency responsible for Singapore's GovTech, and that is behind one of the innovations that we have featured in as a case study, the facial verification for national digital identity. So these reports are available at trends.oecdtrade.opsi.org. And all this work has brought us to today. But with that, I'd like to pass the session to our partner, Abeer.
Thank you, Marco, for your words, and thank you everyone for joining this session. My name is Abeer Tahlak. I'm the director of the Mohammed bin Rashid Center for Government Innovation at the UAE Prime Minister's Office. It's of course my pleasure to be part of such a crowd, all of whom I'm certain are leading massive efforts to stimulate and enrich innovation within their government sectors. While we'll be hearing from 3 speakers today, I encourage all of you to go over the Global Trends Reports, which features over 14 case studies and identifies innovation trends across 5 different reports. For us, each report was special in a sense. It uncovered stories of innovators who are working to make a difference in how government serves its people. And with this, I am happy to share, I need to share my screen. So, and with this, I'm happy, of course, to launch the 5th and final report in this series where we explored how governments are upskilling and investing in people in innovative ways. The report identified 2 main themes. Theme 1 looks at investing in the public as a critical resource, while theme 2 focused on upskilling the public service to unlock the potential of government. I'm also happy to have Teemu Roos with us to speak more about elements of AI, which is featured as a case study in this report. Of course, in normal circumstances, we would feature the case studies in the Edge of Government as part of the World Government Summit here in the UAE. The Edge of Government is an experiential exhibition in which we bring together a careful, curated experiences to inspire governments around the world to fuel the progress. Nonetheless, we celebrate these efforts and hope they can inspire you all to take action and replicate these successes in your respective governments. This report, along the other 4, will be available, as Marco just mentioned, at trends.oecd-opsi.org. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Abeer. Now that we've finished the opening remarks, we're going to do this session a little bit differently than we've done the other sessions in Government Aftershock, where we're building this around a series of talks. So you'll be able to hear directly from the innovators that are behind the case studies that we featured in this year's series of Trends Reports. So first off, Abeer, I think I'll just pass it back to you if you'd like to give your talk. And we hear from your experiences with the Ministry of Possibilities, which was in our 2nd trend report on seamless government.
Sure. So in addition to managing the Mohammed bin Rashid Center for Government Innovation, I'm also the Director of Possibilities at the Ministry of Possibilities, one of the projects, as Jamie mentioned, in Report 2. And I would love to take this opportunity to tell you more about this ministry. Looking back in 2017, the UAE government unveiled its centennial plan, Vision 2071, with an ambitious goal to make the UAE the best nation in the world by 2071. So for that to happen, the government needs to move beyond its siloed thinking and start addressing its wicked and impossibles that hinders its progress on a local, international level. So a neutral space was needed, a space close enough to the core of government, where it was not detached from the overall missions, but Again, far enough from the center to be removed from the mandates, the measures, and the whole traditional bureaucracies that limits the bold and broad thinking. Hence, His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum, Prime Minister and ruler of Dubai, directed the launch of the Ministry of Possibilities. So the ministry is a virtual ministry created to incubate and solve the systemic challenges and impossibilities of government. There's no single active minister of this ministry. Instead, we rely on time-bound departments, each with a focus on answering a wicked question, which could be considered as a priority national portfolio. So for every department, we apply design thinking and the experimentation method to develop proactive and disruptive solutions to tackle these critical issues while bringing together federal, local government teams, and of course, private sector in addition to the citizens. So the ministry's work is centered around 4 main mission pillars: to identify impossibles, to incubate virtual time-bound departments or teams to solve and explore the impossible, to educate and train individuals on the mindset of design and experimentation in government, and of course, ultimately to inspire other governments with the UAE's methodology of possibilities. So the Ministry of Possibilities is the first ministry with a mission focused entirely to incubate and develop radical solutions for government's most critical challenges. So the can of worms that no one wants to actually handle or open. So and as you're all aware, this network of innovators here, like any new project we had our challenges. And I would love to share some of those challenges, since this is what makes it real as an experience for myself and all my colleagues that were part of this journey. The most challenging issue overall has been initiating a project with an unknown solution or an envisioned end state. So as we all know here, government employees generally operate in an environment of certainty and usually work toward a clear goal. So the Ministry of Possibilities methods runs contrary to this mode. So you can just imagine the first year of dealing with all this. And another key challenging was it was a bit difficult for team members to adapt to the agile working methods of this ministry, which focuses on continuous iterations that is based on user feedback. So this approach was uncomfortable for some, but over time, the learning by doing approach enabled team members to acquire new skills over time and become better equipped to adopt these new ways of working. And some of the other lessons we learned, to be honest, through this journey is the importance of having a common understanding of the impossible in order to make this collective progress together. It was also important to have a dedicated team with specific competencies who are not involved in other tasks or, any type of work that cannot be undertaken as a side project. So I think the most important lesson learned is to be patient, as there will always be some sort of resistance to new approaches when challenging existing beliefs and norms. And as a final thought, I think our hope for the Ministry of Possibilities is to be a replicable model. So as many governments are facing similar challenges. So to do so, we also documented our methodologies to help guide other governments once the ministry's efforts have been refined, tested, and of course, learned from and iterated. This is what I have for now as thoughts, and thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you so much, Abeer. It's a super interesting case. And that case study is featured in the trends reports at trends.oecd-opsi.org. I dropped that URL into the chat box on the events platform. If anybody has any questions about this particular example and talk throughout the session, you can feel free to drop questions in the question box, and we'll come back to those towards the end. And with that, I'll pass it on to Mikk Vainik, who is the head of Accelerate Estonia, for our second talk, which we featured in our very first trends report on innovative responses to COVID-19. With that, I'll pass it to Mikk. Thank you.
I just really feel that I could make use of a teleport machine and get myself to Dubai to figure out how the Ministry of Possibilities actually work, because that's we have maybe a very minor version of what you have at full scale, but we're thinking on the same lines. I think it's the task of government to make the impossible possible, because that's why we've delegated some of the tasks to the public sector, that things need to happen. And just as a bit of a context of about Estonia, I think most of the listeners know, but we are operating an extremely digital society. So there are 3 services of government that are not online. The rest is online, and that I think tells you a lot, and that also tells about the public-private cooperation model that we have been operating for more than 20 years already. So it's in our DNA to do everything together with the private sector. That's an important point to bear in mind when you think about the response to COVID-19. And also, a couple of remarks before I come to the Hack the Crisis movement is that we have already some very good examples of creating this perfect storms, such as e-residency. By perfect storm, I mean public-private collaboration that leads to a totally new market that has not existed before. And that is also the mission of Accelerate Estonia, to find a few more of those perfect storms that Estonia could take advantage of. And a key difference is, though, that we want to focus on things that are societally very, very important, such as mental health or the environment. So it's not all about technology, it's also about what is wrong in the society and how we might find out of the box ideas to find some solutions. And our tagline is solving wicked problems. So on March 12, when the emergency situation was declared in Estonia, then the minister at the time sent out an email to the ministry folks that if you have something extraordinary to suggest, then please do so. And because our tagline is solving wicked problems, then I told my team that we need to do something now. And my team consists of mostly private sector people with background in running hackathons, running accelerators, stuff like that. So on the morning of the 13th, we had this idea of running an online hackathon. And I asked my team if they would support that, and they said yes. Estonia is a very lean government, so within an hour we had the support of the minister. Within 2 hours we had set up all the necessary partnerships. Within 6 hours we had set up the technology using some of the very close collaborations that we already had, including a startup that has now been rebranded into Eventor now, though, but was actually previously Guana, who has also been to the Dubai government accelerator. We used them, and at a very low cost, we were able to set up an online hackathon, so that in the morning everyone was just freaked out about what just happened. We have never experienced that. By the evening, we had our minister and our president opening the online hackathon that eventually brought us to 1,000 participants, and 30 teams finished on Sunday. A few of them are still very actively used, such as a chatbot for the government to answer questions from the citizens, like what should I do when I feel this and that and whatever I do feel, but also like physical assets such as breathing ventilators. So it was very crazy, even especially for government to come in 6 hours to a position where we have tens of teams working on crazy stuff to fight this pandemic very, very quickly. And after a few weeks after the event, a top-level civil servant said that there were so many ideas coming in. Please stop doing those hackathons. We don't have the capacity to take all of that innovation in, which I think is among the most important learnings from this, that the government needs to have capacity to absorb what is coming towards them, and you shouldn't really blame them if they don't currently have it, because no one was ready for that. But this first event in Estonia led to nearly 70 different local events worldwide, including EU-wide EU versus virus hack and the global hack. And it led to around 100,000 people worldwide hacking against the virus. I think this was more viral than the virus itself. It led to thousands of teams trying to find ways to get immediate response, trying to figure out business models that would also work after the crisis is over. And I know by fact that it also has led to already some exits by those companies. It has led to the creation of new companies. And obviously it has led to a much better dialogue between the public and the private sector. But as I said, or maybe I didn't say, if you're on the edge of government, you need to balance really, really well, because one of the learnings that we also had is that this can have a high toll on the mental health of people, because working weeks and weeks on such apps, it can lead to burnout. So you need to be careful, and you need to give your people some room to breathe. That is, I think, one of the key lessons to take out of this pilot day. Then another learning is that although we had thousands of teams, tens of thousands of participants, what is really crucial for that kind of innovation to be embedded into government is to have those free radicals within every government that's involved, who actually take the time to adopt that stuff in the government processes, if that is the end goal, and currently it was. So that is why I think Ministry of Possibilities and Accelerate Estonia and programs like that are really, really necessary, and I think the importance of those programs was very vivid during the crisis, and I think we are going to see a wave of those things going forward very, very quickly. But what is also important lesson is that whatever field you choose to do and quick innovation to get together with the private sector, the urgency needs to be there. With the emergency situation around the world, of course, there was no question that the urgency was there. But I think also in the future, to pick between challenges that the government can quickly resolve together with the private sector, the key thing is that the urgency and the sense of mission needs to be there. So that's one of the key takeaways for me. And generally, I'm just right now very proud of having done that stuff. Because it led up to so many new projects that otherwise wouldn't have happened, and it proves to myself and many others that the government can be a facilitator of really, really important projects. But none of this would have happened if some of these key partnerships hadn't existed before. So I'm going to end with what I started with, that in Estonia, we already have very good collaboration with hackathon organizers, with the tech community, with people who are on innovative positions within the government. That helped a lot, and I think that made a difference between our hackathon and many where the government involvement was minimal. So if there's just one takeaway, then please do build those connections with the private sector. You never know when they are going to pay off like big time. So that's all for now.
Thank you, Mikk. Actually, while your report or case study was featured in our report on COVID-19 responses, the entire report too was essentially focused on how to build those connections with other sectors and across government. So I think yours is kind of almost a kind of a hybrid approach and crossing both of those reports. Thank you very much. And with that, I'll pass it over to Sue Stevenson, who is the Director of Strategic Partnerships and international development for Barefoot College International, which was featured in our third Trends Report of 2020 on the topic of focusing on the overlooked. And over to you, Sue.
Thank you, Jamie. Thank you, Jamie. Okay, wonderful to be here. And let me just tell you a little bit to begin with about Barefoot College. Some of you may know us, some of you may not. So Barefoot College International is based out of India. We work with the world's poorest and most remote communities because we recognize their potential. We were founded on the Gandhian principles of leave no man behind. And today we have programs in 93 countries in the world, Latin America, Africa, India, Southeast Asia, and 14 of the island states in the Pacific. We have 4 regional training centers, with 2 more opening in 2021. It would have been 2020 if not for COVID. And our programs address 14 of the 17 United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Our flagship program is an innovative, multifaceted women-led access to clean energy program. We train women, mainly illiterate and semi-literate, to be solar engineers, known as the Solar Mamas. Based on the feedback that we got from many of the communities where we trained people, we also developed a co-curriculum called Enrich. And this focuses on many of what often people refer to as the soft skills. So we work with them on their aspirations, on their confidence, as well as their competencies in areas such as financial inclusion, digital inclusion, women's health, especially reproductive health, micro-enterprise skills, civil society, human rights, and environmental sustainability. And this goes alongside our technical training. And we did this because we thought access to energy on its own was not enough. We realized that by giving tools and knowledge to leverage that access into other competencies, we'd be creating even more long-term benefits. So the women, when they've been trained, return to their communities where they build, install, and maintain the solar systems. Every household that receives one pays an amount of money that they used to spend, proportion of what they used to spend on kerosene candles and batteries, into a village fund that pays the salaries of the solar engineers and for replacement parts as and when necessary. And we have a myriad of benefits that accrue from this. Obviously, light from when the sun goes down to when the sun comes back up again, but many other things beside. The ability to pump water. And when you look at the amount of time women in the developing world spend collecting water, you're saving them a lot of time. Better education outcomes, whether that be for the children who can now do their homework at night, or extending the day for the adults. Better health outcomes. The women, and especially the children, are not breathing in the black smoke from the kerosene. Empowerment of women and girls. And in many parts of the world where we work, girls are married off at 12. So this is very important. Environmental sustainability and livelihood development. We work with them on livelihoods that can be pertinent and easily done in the parts of the world where they are. Because if you can suddenly have 2 people earning an income within a household, it makes a lot of difference. So basically, this power platform allows for social and economic growth by putting education and technology in the hands of the communities. And they're the people who know what they need to do. We're giving them the fishing rod. We're not giving them the fish. We recognize that self-sufficiency and agency are the keys to creating developmental opportunities for rural communities. There are still about 1 billion people in the world who do not have access to energy. 600 million of these are in Africa alone. Most of these places where it's too costly for the grid to ever reach. Rurally poor regions suffer from time and resource poverty. They spend all of their time working to survive. Access to energy solves a significant part of this time poverty issue, as well as access to water, the internet, and all that that provides. Putting control and management of resources in the hands of the communities allows them to access and create their own opportunities. Power and light enables communities to conquer the factors that make education and economic growth challenging. Why women, I'm often asked. Well, we view women as the catalysts because they're often an untapped resource, largely marginalized, uneducated, and restricted to household roles, allowing little time for aspirations. In September 2015, McKinsey came out with a report on gender parity. That report stated that if we could reach gender parity, then we could increase world GDP by 26%. That's more than the GDP of the USA and China put together. And here is another story to illustrate my point. One of the first communities that we solar electrified outside of India was in Timbuktu in Africa. The women were trained, they returned to the community as solar engineers, and the head man was holding one of his regular meetings, which all the men went to and the women didn't. One of the engineers went to the meeting and the head man said to her, "Why are you here? You're a woman." And she said, "But I'm not here as a woman. I'm here as an engineer." To which he said, "Okay, you can stay." And I think this is very important in showing that how people perceive each other and getting them to change how they perceive each other is a very important part of what we do. We work with governments, with private organizations, and with other NGOs. And we're always looking for proactive investment and support in order to scale our model. I'd like to just very quickly give you 3 examples of working with governments that you might like to take away with you. So in Zanzibar in August, we had the 5th anniversary of the opening of our regional training center there. The president of Zanzibar, in his speech, talked about the importance of the solar mamas as part of their energy policy in order to reach the last mile communities, the grassroots people. In Madagascar, the government has been our partner in building a regional training center there. They plan to train 744 solar engineers and solar electrify 630,000 homes by 2030. In Fiji, the government is in the process of building a regional training center opening next year. And recently in Parliament there, the Minister for Women explained why it is key to empowering women in rural communities. She recognizes that increasing educational outcomes, empowering women, and economic productivity drives rural prosperity. Now, how have we addressed the challenge of COVID? We realized quite quickly that many of our communities were being hit hard economically by the crisis. And so we quickly pivoted aspects of our microenterprise training to help them meet new needs. For instance, in Zanzibar, producing PPE equipment so that they could profit and fight COVID-19 at the same time. We had to reassess some of our supply chains, and we've spent a massive amount of time and energy and funding in making sure that our communities didn't go hungry. Again, a major problem in certain parts of the world where we work. We realized that a lot of communities are actually now at a level where they're capable of taking care of their own needs in the longer term in the face of COVID. What they need the most help with is meeting sudden sharp shortfalls in income and resources caused by larger economic consequences, for example, at the national level. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sue. It's a super fascinating case. It was really interesting to meet with you and other folks working with Barefoot College to see how transformational it'll become when someone can learn how to electrify their villages and their neighbors with solar power. It's a really fascinating kind of leapfrog case, and really just not changes the villages, but also gives these women who participate in the program a new sense of purpose and new skills in many ways. So thank you very much for that. With that, we will move to our the last of our talks before we move into the discussion question. And I see a lot of great questions coming in from the audience. So thank you, keep those coming. We will get to them. And with that, I'll pass it over to Teemu Roos, who is professor of computer science at the University of Helsinki and also the lead instructor of Elements of AI, which is featured in our 5th and final trends report of 2020 on upskilling and investing in the public, which was just launched this morning. We put it up, but technically it was launched with this panel, and that is available on the website that we added to the chat box in the event platform. And with that, I'll pass it over to you, Teemu.
Thanks a lot, Jamie, and very happy to be here. Greetings to everyone, be it, I suppose, afternoon for most people. I will actually try and share my screen. I have a few slides to show on the case that I'm presenting. You should be able to see them now. As Jamie introduced me, I'm from the University of Helsinki, and the case that I'm presenting is the Elements of AI initiative. And our goal with this initiative in Finland and now in Europe and globally is to improve the level of, shall we say, digital literacy or AI literacy of the general public through online education. So maybe I'll start with a bit of motivating of why this is why we see this as a really critical goal. The issue there is that artificial intelligence or AI is really a topic that everybody's interested in, but most people encounter it through maybe science fiction or at least the media, where it is often discussed in a highly mystified manner through myths and all kinds of let's say less scientific. In a less scientific manner. All right, and so what I call the problem here is the so-called societal cost of the mystification of AI, and by that I mean the fact that people, the general public, are not able to take part in the discourse that we need to have in order to support our democratic processes through which we regulate AI and digital technologies more generally. The idea, of course, here is that these technologies are tools by which we can do good or bad things, and it is often not a technological challenge to do something. It's rather a question of whether we should do that in the first place. So if you think of the some of the harmful use cases, those might be to do with social media or filter bubble effects, political polarization effects, and sort of really multifaceted problems and phenomena that involve not only the technological issues, how do you build such systems, but more like they've got a lot to do with the surrounding society in which these systems are embedded. So thereby, I have this statement that the important decisions that tell how our societies are going to thrive in the age, if you will, in the age of AI, where these technologies are being used in a lot of what we do every day, are not technological problems or questions. They're rather political questions. So we need to be able to regulate and direct the use of such technologies to improve our well-being. Well, okay, how do we do that? Many of the solutions that there are, there are many, governmental innovations that might support that, the regulatory processes. But the fundamental thing, the way I see it at least, is that we need to be able to get rid of those myths. So we need to get to the get to a level in the discourse where we are talking rationally based on facts. So we need a lot of experts who have learned about AI by either studying or maybe working with it in their professional capacity to reach out. We need journalists, of course, to not distort the messages and the discussions that are going on. And we need the general public to be able to be more critical about what they read. And even more fundamental, of course, underlying all these solutions, all these approaches, all these points, is that we need AI education that is available on all levels, not only at some point at the universities, maybe for the experts, but or earlier on, so that it reaches everyone. And it should be available for all in an equal manner. And our case that I'm presenting is one initiative that has this aim, namely the Elements of AI course. So it's technically it's an online course. If you go to www.elementsofai.com, you can sign up for free. You can view the contents without signing up. But I like to say that it's much more than a course that we just have sitting somewhere online. We're doing a lot of work around the course, so that I'd rather call it initiative or movement rather than just a course. We launched it over 2 years ago. We've got already over 500,000 participants signed up on the course from all over the world. And it's really intended for all. So no coding is required. It's not a computer science course as such, and there's no complex maths. It's more like, as I said, AI literacy, trying to understand how people process data and how do you interpret complex data to be able to build automation around it. And it goes to some of the techniques underlying AI, but then it gets back to at the end of the course to societal implications, and it explains even more in more detail how these things are affecting the way our societies work, and political polarization being one thing that I already mentioned. And it's currently rated the best AI or computer science course on Class Central out of tens of thousands of courses, and it's received a bunch of awards, and it's now a finalist in the Innovation in Politics award this year. And again, what is here, the Innovation in Politics is not an online course on AI. It's rather the initiative where we try and take this course, to the people, and bringing it to the people with various grassroots activities that supports its adoption in different regions. So, for instance, one thing that we're working on is setting up local partnerships. We started in the English and Finnish language here in Finland, 2018, and the next year we launched local campaigns in the local languages in Sweden, Estonia, and Germany. And this year we've already got Denmark, Latvia, Lithuania, France, Belgium, Malta, Ireland, and Poland, and I think Croatia and Italy are the next ones. So we're going to launch it in every single EU country and EU language by next summer. What we're very proud of is the diversity of people that are taking the course. I think globally, in one of our polls, we had 38% female users, which is not very typical for a computer science related course. And in fact, in Finland and in the Nordic countries, the majority of the users are female. So 50%, for instance, in Finland. And we also have people that are not, the typical, users of online courses. So we've people who are already in the working life. We've got people who are already 80 years or 90 years of age, the oldest users. So that's really something that makes me very, very happy. The most heartwarming story I think I heard was a lady who did the course together with her own daughter and her mother. So 3 generations of women coming together around a subject that was somehow, interesting to them, maybe even a little bit scary in the beginning, but then they get familiar with it, and they all probably had a good time as well, spending time together learning. And now we launched just a few weeks ago a follow-up course, a second part, with a similar aim, but involving some programming and some more technical content. And this is really, aiming at upskilling people, offering people the ability to innovate new solutions involving AI and digital technologies, so that they would be better able to work in and manage AI projects, even if they wouldn't necessarily become the developers, the coders. But it's easier to work with coders, work with people with technical skills if you have done a little bit of that yourself. So what we'd like to do is transform people from being consumers of AI to becoming contributors in AI, and that's the goal. So with that, I'd like to just summarize our sentiment, our feeling in creating the course and this movement initiative. We'd like to underline the fact that AI, artificial intelligence, is really for everyone, and it's good to learn something about it. It's also a very fun topic, and after learning about how it works, people usually have a much more educated opinion of where it should be applied, where it shouldn't be applied, and how it should be applied, and then they can get more involved also in the let's say the policy dialogues around it. So that's what we're really looking forward to now, and really ties in nicely with the government innovation examples that we've seen in this session, and we're very proud to be highlighted also in the report that was launched today. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Teemu. I know that when elements of AI first came out, I think back it was 2018, it really took the world by storm, and congratulations on the launch of part 2 with Building AI. Once this event is over, I think it's something that I might dive into myself. It's a super interesting topic. We do a lot of work covering AI for public sector use within OPSI, and I think it's something that public officials and the public more broadly can really get a lot of value of. Thank you very much for that. And with that, I think we'll take some questions from the audience, and then we also have a few discussion questions of our own. From the audience, Abeer, the first question is actually from you. And it's also a question that I had when we first started looking at the Ministry of Possibilities, and it's the idea and application of a virtual ministry resonates strongly within, oops, sorry, actually I wanted to read a different one quick. So let's see. The question is essentially, how do you empower a team to work across what would be seen as more regular governmental departments who still stick to normal rules and processes? And I think this is a question that innovation teams and teams that are a bit on the edge of government often face.
So if I may answer, would be, I think, the whole notion of empowering employees by learning by doing. I think there's something around that where we at the Ministry of Possibilities and with the incubation models that we have is, like we said, a lot of resistance happen. You have employees who have this entrepreneurial kind of notion to them, but then have to protect them. In words is to just give them this safe zone. As we said, the Ministry of Possibilities was launched as a direction from the cabinet itself. So there's something about giving this space to incubate, to test, giving them the legal permission. And if I may talk a little bit of the values that we have set for ourselves in this ministry, a main value of it is, we say, and when we mention it and we remind ourselves, is protect those who try. And because we feel when we support our teammates and give them the space and legal kind of protection and permission away of what the current regulation and laws are in the current government, it gives them the space to actually try, piloted, and like I said, by doing, everything is by doing. They would learn this resistance and perseverance actually to have it there. And of course, having the buy-in of leadership with us and having this backup helps it a lot. So we work on a incubation kind of sandbox space to help support such activities. I hope I have answered that.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Abeer. And Mikk, you kind of already answered it in text a little bit, but I was hoping maybe you could touch on vocally another question we got that I think is best directed towards you. And it is, what's the role of public innovation labs? Can they make a difference? In the Netherlands, we had a hackathon organized for creating a health COVID app, but it got a lot of criticism despite being a transparent, innovative approach. What thoughts do you have?
So I'll start with the latter one. So if there's part within the community that don't really want innovative solutions, then just don't go there right now. Because if there's no alliance with the private sector there, then obviously this is not the place you can actually get a breakthrough. It's better to start with those parts of the ecosystem that actually want your solution. Regarding what's the role of innovation labs, then I think there are very different configurations around the world about what innovation labs can do. And usually these are about finding some particular services that are outdated or don't really serve their purpose, and redesigning them, procuring someone who could actually do it in another way. But what I like about my own program and also about the approach at the Ministry of Possibilities is that usually there is some systemic error behind those things, some systemic error because of which those services exist in the first place. And I think the role of innovation labs can be also looking at those systemic errors, but there needs to be an agreement, especially within the public sector, that we are actually giving those ideas also a lifeline, like what could we do differently on a systemic level. So the roles can be very, very different. I think it's important to be bold and go as deep as possible, because at the end of the day, it will more probably result in better public services and a better feeling for the citizens.
Fantastic, thank you. And a question we had was, so you all have experience either working directly in innovation in governments or working with governments in innovation. And I think both perspectives are useful here. And we're always fighting, I mean, with OPSI, we're always fighting against the perception that innovation, especially in or with government, is really difficult or even impossible sometimes. And your stories really prove that real and impactful innovation is possible. What have been some of your keys to success from within or in partnership with government that you think could be applicable to the folks listening in the audience? And I think maybe I'll start with you, Teemu. I know that you had a good partnership with the government of Finland.
Yeah, I don't know if I can sort of give a very concrete piece of advice as to how to make it work. We've been very fortunate in the amount of support that we've received from various parts of the government, and even also on the EU level from the European Commission with the EU-wide campaign. I think in our case it was the sort of alignment of the goals that we had from the very beginning, and what that the government has always had, to think of digital literacy as a fundamental piece of how the society can be resilient in under disruptive changes. And I think that has sort of made it very easy for us to argue why the government should support us. What we did, we just started working on something. The University of Helsinki, of course, is a public funded organization. We were kind of free to set our own agenda. We were very pleasantly surprised how the private company Reaktor which has been an equal partner in the initiative, has invested their efforts into creating the course and the campaign. We were kind of surprised that the private company wanted to do that without any strings attached or any kind of direct monetization plans even. But once we started working on that, once we had demonstrated that we're going to have a positive impact in by this initiative, then the government kind of started supporting us and even funding us more recently with the EU-wide campaign. So I'm afraid I can't really tell how you get the government to join your innovative ideas, I guess, except that do what they are already committed to doing and striving towards. I hope the other panelists can add some more general piece of advice on that.
Thank you, Teemu. Anyone else from the panel want to contribute any insights on how to make that work?
I have a tip. I have a tip and the principle. The tip is that always take a second opinion if someone tells you that something is not possible within the government. This is also advice I've heard from our current Secretary of State, that it's always possible to read the law in many different ways and find a way through, because the law is not meant to be rigid or to rule out some possibilities that can lead to a breakthrough. So find a second opinion, either it's from the government itself or from a private vendor, doesn't really matter. So be consistent in that. And the principle is, to me, that when you think of it, we really do only give to the government the services that are too risky for the private sector to run. If these are too risky, then obviously the public sector needs to have the agreement from the public that they will run those risks for the private sector, so that if the government covers those risks and finds opportunities, then this is what we're supposed to do. But of course, because there is no competition, then it's easy to refrain from running risky projects. But in principle, I really do believe that we should be running much more riskier projects and getting the both good and bad results from that.
If I may add, Jamie, if possible.
Please do.
I think just a simple kind of thought from my end will be is, if you explain the value and the impact of it, I think that would be easier going backwards with having all the stakeholders, whether they were citizens, private sector, federal, local entities and government. So just make sure the impact and the value is clear enough, and I'm sure everyone would be on board. Of course, I come from a country which I'm grateful with the most innovative leaders anyone could ask for. So I come with a biased point of view, but I'm very thankful for the support and the buy-in of leadership. But again, it's because they understand the impact and the value that this could add as a government.
If I could also add to that, I completely concur with Abeer. We have many examples of working with governments all around the world. And what we have always found is, as long as we are able to prove the impact and it helps address challenges that those governments are also trying to address in their countries, then we get buy-in.
Jamie, you're muted.
Mute, yes, the dreaded mute problem. One more question from you, Abeer. We have someone asking, in the Ministry of Possibilities, how do you go about creating synergies with other departments while trying to also overhaul the way they do their work and do the way you do your work?
So I think bringing them earlier on board to the journey. So I understand. So to create synergies, number one, of course, you go deep into the cultural aspects of things. So the answer that could work for the UAE might not be the same answer that could work for somewhere else. But I think the more you understand your stakeholder, the more you kind of get closer to those stakeholders and bring them on board and make them part of the decision making earlier. We at the Ministry of Possibilities have a model where we name a champion for the department, for the time-bound department, and usually it's a minister from the current cabinet. The minister creates his team. He appoints a director for the day-to-day kind of details, and then they create a group of teams. Actually, you have a core team, and you have time-bound team members who come in and out at different phases, and they're all a mix of, and when I say users can be government, citizens, users in the broader definition that we're all aware of. At the same time, we have a leadership team. We call them leadership team, where the minister understands who are his stakeholders. And usually they are whether other ministers, director generals, heads, chairmen of private companies. So they all sit as the leadership team of that department. So they all share the same impossible. They all have parts of the mandates. So they all have the buy-in of the impact and the value. But as a whole portfolio, no one owns it. No current owner of that portfolio. Hence, I think this is how we try to create those synergies and make them all owners of the problem, make them fall in love with the problem rather than the solution, so you get the best of it.
Fantastic, thank you, Abeer. We had a question from OPSI that so through the course of this project and throughout 2020, we've seen that this has been a wildly challenging and difficult year, a very disruptive year, but it's also serves to underline the importance of government and importance of government in partnership with others. And has really been a catalyst for innovation, maybe an unfortunate catalyst, but a catalyst nonetheless. Going into 2021, and this is a question that'll be posed to each of you, because I'd love to know each of your responses. How can we leverage this innovative momentum? And are there opportunities where you think that we really need to double down and move forward more strongly, or areas that we're at risk of dropping the ball because we're moving too fast or missing the point on something? If it's all right, Sue, maybe I could start with you.
Certainly. On the doubling down piece, I think the partnership is absolutely key. The public, private, and I would also bring in NGO, social enterprise. That is what I see as being really key. And we've got to continue with, the innovation that's happened in 2020 would perhaps have taken 5-10 years in certain areas to actually come about. We need to continue that drive.
Fantastic. And how about you, Mikk?
Well, for the next year, we try to focus on our missions on areas that are hit by the crisis and where we need some quite rapid innovation, such as mental health related issues, but also there have been very many new forms of problems around accessibility to both physical and digital services, accessibility to, I don't know, wherever, basically also to education, because all of that has been disrupted. And thirdly, we cannot forget our commitments to turn our economy greener. So for me, it's a mix of taking advantage of the urgency where we have it, especially due to the crisis, but balancing that with the long-term stuff that comes with the green turn and everything related to that. So this is where we also see that both the private and public sector in Estonia are most worried and most ready to set to embark on a mission together with us to find some unexpected solutions. So let's cross our fingers, and we'll come up with something over the next year as well.
Thanks, Mikk. From an OPSI perspective and OEC perspective, I'm taking notes here because so far this sounds like a recipe for our future work. So interesting insight so far. And Teemu, do you have thoughts?
Well, I would sort of very much agree on what Mikk said. I think the crisis that we're still facing, and hopefully we'll get at some point sort of more or less past, has taught us a few things, and I think one of those things is a very positive one in the sense that we've learned to trust science much more than before, and so I think there's a chance for us to leverage that to, you know, as Mikk brought up, to also turn our attention to the climate crisis, and to have people understand that change is possible. You know, we've had to change, we've been able to change, and hopefully that'll be what brings us out of the current COVID crisis. And I think what we'll learn from that is that it is possible. I think we're going to have to sort of become, you know, every one of us has to have a small ministry of possibility inside us, and I think that is getting a bit more boost from as soon as we're starting to turn the page in terms of the COVID. The challenge is, as you know, asked Jamie whether there's a chance we'd be dropping the ball somewhere. I think it's got to do with equality. Many of the things that we're seeing, many of the positive things are maybe not evenly distributed. And you know, my own case that I presented, being online education, it has used challenges into being, you know, avoiding the fact that we'd be just, you know, expanding the knowledge gap or the skills gap rather than shrinking it. So that there's something, some new innovations that we're going to need to make it equally beneficial to all citizens, everybody on the planet. But I'm very positive because of the status of science being maybe brought up closer to where it belongs in the public discourse and people's minds.
Thank you, Teemu. And as someone from the US, I hope that's true everywhere. It's something that I think that some countries are more ahead of the curve than others.
Yeah, as I said, we need something to ensure that this is all equally beneficial to all. So there's work to be done there.
Absolutely. And how about you, Abeer?
So I think 2020 and this whole pandemic, if I may say, accelerated a lot of things that was already initiated, started, some strategies that were already put in place, and it just showed us that everything can happen. I mean, everything could happen, and actually we can implement and try it. You know, a lot of the impossibles were made possible in less than a month when the whole lockdown in March and April happened, and you know, the first wave was a shock, but then we did not stop. And if I may share a quick insight on what happened in the UAE. So when people are, of course, there was a force, you know, to face and like the firefighting hats were on, but then there was a whole workforce that was created in the UAE government to think of the post-COVID world. So we, back in, you know, April, May, we were all busy working on what would the post-COVID world mean for the UAE. And then UAE being, you know, bold and brave in announcing a more agile and nimble government, where a whole structure of a new cabinet was announced, where His Highness Sheikh Mohammed, Prime Minister and ruler of Dubai, actually announced a more flexible and a fast government that can, you know, be agile and not just react, proact. Some of the main changes, and if this crowd is not aware, was naming a Minister of State for Government Development and the Future, Minister of State for Digital Economy and Artificial Intelligence. There was a whole focus on the economy, where the Ministry of Economy added 2 additional ministers of state. We have a Minister of State for Entrepreneurship and Small and Medium Enterprises, and another Minister of State for Foreign Trade was added under the bigger umbrella of the Ministry of Economy. Another addition was a new Ministry of Industry and Advanced Technology. The Ministry of Energy and Infrastructure was combined and merged. And then there was a whole announcement of a Chief of Strategy and Government Innovation for the UAE government as an official announcement and a title and a seat. And of course, a new Chief of Government Services. So a lot of those announcements were made while some governments were still debating and reacting or choosing how to react to this, while we as a government were already proacting and making those bold steps and changes, because we understand that this is an opportunity that could be taken forward and, like I said, accelerate some of the plans that were stuck for a while.
Absolutely. I think we've seen years or sometimes even decades of advancement taking place in the last 8 or 9 months. It's really been incredible. And with our last 5 minutes or so, one question we're trying to ask to everybody during this day here is, at a personal level, what do you want to do differently? What do you see yourself changing or doing differently in light of what has been revealed over the last year or so? And maybe Abeer, I'll stick with you since you were the last up, and then we'll round out the panel and then we'll close out the session.
So on a personal level, what would I do differently?
What would you like to do differently going forward, given how the year has gone?
Okay. I don't know if it's doing differently or doing more of. I think I will just do more of what we have planned or what we are being doing in this period. I know we've missed a lot of the human physical interactions, which adds another aspect to the whole incubation model, or this coming and testing and piloting and experimenting. I think I would not do differently. I would do more of what we actually started.
Great answer. And how about you, Teemu?
What I've learned is that it's kind of it takes a bit of courage to actually pursue something that you're not sure that is what you're expected to do. And I would sort of, having learned that it sometimes actually pays off much more than sort of doing what you've got a list of criteria that you're benchmarked against, and these are your like personal KPIs or whatever. And I think what I've learned is that it can pay off a lot if you don't chase those KPIs, but you chase something that is sort of more that can be very big, and even with the risk of neglecting some of those KPIs. I think people will understand when you say, okay, well, I didn't do those goals because I was working on this big thing. So I think what I'd like to do is sort of keep some of that as a lesson to be even more bold and aim big and do something really well, rather than trying to do everything and get your CV a bit better shape and get those KPIs satisfied in every respect. So I think being bold enough to disappoint in some sense, even if you can sort of create something much more on another front. Maybe that's the lesson for myself.
Fantastic. Thank you, Teemu. Sue, how about we go over to you?
Okay, really good question. Certainly continue to do more of what we're doing. Being nimble, I think, is very important. The use of technology innovation has been key, and we've all seen that. But I think one important thing to keep in mind is that everything, certainly with the people we work with, I don't think everything can be digitized. I think we still need to keep the human-centric piece in there. That would be my main thrust.
Fantastic. And last up to you, Mikk.
So I think what I want to focus more on is that we don't overlook specific risk that we have. So the world has seen in recent years a surge of different innovation labs and mission-based approach and dedicated ministries to radical innovation. But there is a risk that underneath that name, we still keep to our usual procedures. And this will just dissatisfy a lot of people. So we need to be really dedicated to doing things differently and trusting us in doing so. But on the flip side, what I want to do more of is give time to myself, because one cannot be in acceleration mode all of the time. There's always a big need for reflection and going and being on good terms with yourself. This is something I would actually want to focus more on, because there's a big risk for burnout when you're on the edge of government.
Very true. Everybody's been so busy this year. I feel like we spend 10, 12 hours a day in front of Zoom. It's always important to take care of yourself as well, or else because we got to be in it for the marathon. With that, I want to thank you all so much thank you all to the speakers. Thank you very much to everybody in the audience for joining us today. We really appreciate it. And we hope you are really getting some value out of this session and all the sessions at Government Aftershock. And